Who are you? Weary waves caress your bare feet. Gulls skim across the water, and you can believe it is their tranquilizing chatter that awakens you. You can also imagine that the warmth of the sand where you lie is that of your own body, that it had awaited you, was held for you alone. The darkest convolution and the most recent wound in your consciousness tell you you have been here before. You touch your burning throat and raise your head from the sand. First, you look close around you. The flotsam of many disasters returns a different gaze, sterile and opaque. Only a green bottle buried in the damp sand and, like you, licked by the sea, shines with something that your hunger and thirst would like to identify as a life of its own. A sealed bottle that may contain something to drink. You realize that the shine you attribute to the bottle originates only in your starving gaze. You pick up the bottle, you turn it, shake it, but it contains no liquid, only something like a twisted whitish root, some repulsive tail, perhaps a twist of tightly rolled paper. Weakly, you toss the bottle back into the waves, and again look about you, this time into the distance. The sun is beginning to set behind the dunes, but on the skyline you perceive a long row of figures passing between you and the sun. Dark outlines, silhouette after silhouette, plodding slowly and silently. Little clouds of dust raised in their passing whirl and disintegrate in the light of the setting sun. You hear, perhaps you hear, a wordless hymn, guttural and somber. The marches move with lowered heads as if each of them, even those who are unencumbered, even those who are riding, were carrying a heavy burden. You cannot count them. The procession stretches, uninterrupted, from one extreme of the dunes to the other. Clearly what you hear is a persistent, rhythmic drumming. You raise your arms and beckon. You shout, and more than greeting, your salve implores help. But no sound leaves your throat. You stand and brush the sand from your body. You run toward the dunes. Your feet sink in deep, soft sand. You progress with difficulty. You will never be able to make the climb. It seemed so close from the beach, so easy to gain. Sand cascades onto your head, choking you, blinding you, deafening you. You breathe sand. And yet you can see the insects working their hidden tunnels in the dunes, insects that at your stumbling, desperate step skitter like grains of gold in a sieve. Filled with gratitude, you are alert to the marvels of the earth. The earth lives, even in the tunnels of the most despicable insects. You do not know how you came here, but an instinct that has been awakened with movement tells you you have been saved and that you should be thankful. Someone shouts to you from the heights of the dune. A dark arm waves to you. A rope strikes your forehead. You hold on with all your strength, and open-mouthed, eyes tightly closed, you are dragged up through the sand. You are exhausted. At the top of the incline, arms seize you and try to pull you to your feet. Each time you fall again beside the halberds the soldiers have left lying in the sand. Your legs are numb. The procession has halted because of you. The soldiers grumble reprovingly. They hear the sound of a penetrating voice and hesitate no longer. They leave you lying there on the ground, your dry, sand-caked tongue protruding from your mouth, and the caravan renews its route to the rhythm of the drummer. You watch the figures pass, blurred, reverberating, spectral. Fatigue blinds your eyes. Behind the troop of halberdiers follow two officials on horseback, and behind them many people riding mules laden with coffers and large kettles, wineskins, and strings of onion and pimento. The muleteers drive their animals, whistling through toothless gums, and a garlic sweat glistens on their scarred and barely healed cheeks. You watch the passing parade, barefoot women balancing clay jugs upon their heads, men in straw hats carrying long poles on which are impaled the heads of wild boars, a party of huntsmen leading suspicious dogs, men in hempen sandals, 2 by 2, supporting poles upon their shoulders from which hang spoiled partridges and worm-infested hares, modest palanquins bearing women with protruding eyes and women with deep-set eyes, women with rosy cheeks and women with parchment-dry skin, all breathless from the heat, all fanning themselves with their hands, and even the dry-skinned ones trying to dry with handkerchiefs the perspiration streaming down their faces toward paper and parchment-stiff wimples fastened beneath their chins. More elaborate palanquins occupied by men of wise aspect, whose eyeglasses slip down their noses or are suspended from black ribbons, men with salt and pepper beards and with holes in their slippers. Hooded monks intoning the lugubrious hymn you heard from the beach. At last you can decipher the words, Deus fidelium animarum adesto, supplicationibus nostris et de anime famulae tuae, Joannae reginae, their shoulders bearing the weight of palanquins carrying priests oppressed by heat and by their own humours of urine and incense. Then 2 skittish horses drawing a leather carriage with closed curtains, and behind that, pulled by 6 slow-paced horses and accompanied by another guard of halberdiers, the great funeral coach, black and severe, like a vulture on wheels. And inside the coach, bolted to the floor, the coffin, also black, its glass carapace capturing the light of the setting sun like the glittering shells of the insects that live in the sandbanks. You saw them. I want you to hear my story. Listen. Listen, and I will see for you. Behind the funeral coach follows a tortuous, writhing retinue of beggars, contrite, sobbing, swathed in dark rags, their mangy, scabrous hands offering empty soup bowls to the dying sun. At times the most daring run ahead to beg a scrap of the rotten meat and are rewarded with kicks. But they are free to come and go, run ahead, fall behind. Not so another throng encircled by a crossbow-armed guard, painfully dragging themselves forward, women dressed in long, torn silks, hiding their faces behind a bent arm or behind cupped hands. Dark men with dark gazes, painfully choking back scraps of a song caught in taut throats. Other men with tangled beards and long dirty hair, dressed in rags, in pain, attempting to hide the round yellow patches sewn over their hearts. And in the midst of this multitude, staring at the heavens, a monk humming, "They must be converted by the eventide. They will be hunger like dogs. They will surround the city." And behind the beggars and the captives marches a page dressed all in black and beating on a black velvet-covered drum, a slow, deliberate rhythm like the sound of the feet and wheels and iron-shod hooves upon the sand. Black breeches, black leather shoes, black gloves holding black drumsticks. Only the page's face is alight, like a golden grape in the midst of so much blackness. Firm, fine skin, you are sure. Once you have seen the page, you truly see again, your sight no longer clouded by obscuring sound. Upturned nose, gray eyes, tattooed lips. He is staring directly ahead. The leather tips of the drumsticks define, or only recapture, the solemn chant floating above the procession. Giovane Regine, Nostrae refrigere sedem, quietis beatitudinem luminis claritatem. The overall chant of the procession that competes with and drowns out the secret chant the monk hums amid the captives. They will hunger like dogs. They must be converted by the eventide. You have so feared that someone would ask, "Who are you?" knowing you cannot answer, that now you do not dare, for fear of another's fear, to ask the same question of the page with the tattooed lips marching to the muted rhythm of the drum. At first, kneeling there in the sand, the sea behind your back, you felt confused, and you watched until the caravan passed you by. Then quickly you arose. The long line is disappearing in a cloud of dust, creating the illusion, accentuated by the long moribund shadows, of a distance that belies time. For a moment you think you might never again recapture. Are you still dreaming on the beach? Have you dreamed of another shipwreck, death by drowning, burial in the sea? The company of that long parade, at once funereal and festive, with its onions, halberds, horses, palanquins, beggars, Arab and Hebrew captives, palanquins, hymns, coffin, and drummer. You rise to your feet and race to catch up with the last figure in the cortege, the black-clad page, who does not turn to look at you, who continues to march to the rhythm of the drum, who is perhaps challenging you to ask, "Who are you?" knowing that you already know, he knows. You fear to ask the question and receive the response. You run as if the distance that separates you from the caravan could be measured in time and not space. You run, but all the while continue to address that part of you do not know. What a fool you are. It's been centuries since you've seen your face in a mirror. How long has it been since you've seen your twin image? How can you be sure? Perhaps the storm you tossed upon these shores erased your features. Perhaps the corpuscent burned your skin, and the waves tore out your hair. Perhaps the sand wounded forever your eyes and lips. Storm and sword, corpuscent and worms, waves and dust, sand and axe. You extend your seaweed-entangled arms. How can you know what appearance you present to the world? How the world may see you, shipwrecked, orphaned, poor dear wretch. The drummer does not turn to look at you, and you do not dare ask him anything. Again you touch his shoulder, but he is indifferent to your appeal. You run before him, and his eyes look through you as if you did not exist. You leap, you growl, you fall to your knees, you rise again. You wave your arms wildly before his eyes. But the imperturbable page continues on his way, and again the cortege leaves you behind. Now you run parallel to the procession and the dunes. You run past the drummer, past the Muslims and the Jews, past the beggars and the mounted halberdiers, and in a swift movement, unforeseen by the mounted guard, you leap onto the funeral coach, and in that instant glimpse beneath the glass carapace a bed of black silk, cushioned and decorated around all four sides with black brocaded flowers. And you see the bluish figure reclining there, great staring eyes and skin the color of a plum, prognathic profile with thick parted lips, a medallion upon the silk shirt, a velvet cap. The halberdiers swoop down upon you, seize you by the neck and arms, throw you to the sand. A blow from one of their iron weapons splits your lower lip. You taste your own blood. You smile, idiotically satisfied with this proof of your existence. The preceptor monk of the captives also approaches. gesticulating madly, runs to where you lie in the sand, claims you for his train. What is your name? You cannot respond. The monk laughs. What does it matter? He will say his name is Santa Fe or Santangel, Belez or Patanoi, but of course he is a Jewish pig, a convert. He will not admit even that. He will say he is a true Christian, but I can see the face of a heretic Jew, converted but returned to his faith. I see his hungry dog's face, and I say he belongs in my train. We will make him taste the rotted flesh of pig and see whether he likes it or whether it sickens him. I see the face of a convert pig, a false Christian, a Judaizing animal. He stays in my train, Until now the beggars had paid no attention to you, surely because you are so like them. But now the monk is calling you pig, they pause. They sniff an entertainment, violence, smelling your blood with more acuity than the monk. They wink at one another biliously. They suck their withered gums, shake their lousy heads, point to the diversion, drive their poles into the sand, and run to where you lie, prostrate and bleeding, ringed by halberdiers, the zealous monk leaping about you, and over the heads and between the legs, and embracing the waists of the soldiers, and shouting into the ear of the monk. They stare at you, spit at you, shake their clenched fists at you. Who is he? From a wrecked ship, they say. No, a heretic, this monk says. Hey, you, Santurde, look down on the beach. Anything there? No. I say yes. I see coffers and bottles and pennants. Is the ship's cat on the beach? I say no. Any man on the beach? I say no. No survivors, man or cat. Whatever's down there is ours. They say his ship was lost. I say we beat him to death. Anything's there belongs to him. Kill him, I say. Fucker. If there's no man or cat survived, it's ours. That's the law. They say he's a heretic, a pig, a captive. Who needs another mouth to feed? Who gives a fig if he's a son of Allah or of Moses? We never hear the end of that. Kill him. They pull their poles from the sand and brandish them in the air. They stick them between the monks and the soldiers' arms and legs, guffawing, shrieking toothlessly, spitting. They threaten you, kick you, curse you, as the halberdiers drag you through the sand. The beggars grumble, and the monk returns to his flock of prisoners, and you are dragged toward the small, slow-moving carriage with the drawn curtains.